This is the part of our course where we did the shaker table. So this is a presentation for that. First of all, we were given a remit, and that in it had cutting list, all the sizes of the bits of wood we needed, design, and a production plan, which we filled in slowly, as you can see. See that? That's part of it, and there's another final bit on this side, which is that. But this gets handed in as well. And the journal, which you won't see because that's on the computer, but that gets handed in too, or is already handed in. So first of all, design, the actual research and design. We did mind maps and mood boards, and then I transferred mine to paper. Now you won't be able to see this, but under here, there, I will put a picture, a proper photo, so you can see. But I'll just explain this. The photo should appear now. Shaker style house with a lady standing outside. I'm imagining that would be quite difficult. And then a mosquito to basically say my stepfather was shot down in one, so we wanted something in the family to remind us in the future, sort of thing. So that would have been quite good. I'll probably do that again in something else. And then a Japanese flag, World War II. That would have been all red and white, obviously. But what I finally came on was the Penrose triangle, which you'll see here. Yeah, I couldn't draw it. On there, well, on the piece of paper, you'll see I had real trouble drawing it. So in the end, I cut it out. These are the various. You'll probably be able to see that actually. That's the template. I was doing this as a test. This is like a 2/3 size test. Give you some idea of the measurements. Yeah, we cut those out, and that's me putting it into the wood. So I did each one individually, because if you cut all three and just put them in, 9 times out of 10 they don't fit. You've got to do each bit separately. And that's the finished product up there, which I think I've got another picture of. That's all the stuff that's left over. There we go. There's still some gaps here and there, but this was only a test just to see. The grey didn't stand out very well, so I replaced that with white, which was remarkable difference. So that's the design process, and the yeah, except I did a test joint to see how good I was going to be at the various joints. So this is the start of that. This should appear here too, but I think you can see that, but I'm going to put a clearer one down the bottom anyway. I've left that space just for the job. Yeah, that's me sawing the mortise. That's doing the tenon, 6mm chisel. They're the markings. So we obviously marked where the tenon was going to be, and then cut it out with the chisel, including the deep bits, which obviously the more accurate you can get, the less glue you use. And that's the finished test joint. Now we're a bit further than that, and we planed our legs, which I'll show you. So they start wide at the top and end up thin at the bottom, on the inside only. So we needed to do 8 of those, but it would have taken ages to plane it. I mean, that took me quite a long time just to do that bit. So obviously we did those, built a jig and did them on the machine. So that was a lot quicker than, and then sanded them down. That's the design for that. Right, the leg section. This is the markings. So I've got the design up there, and I've also done a draftsman style one over here, which is also in the pack. Biscuit joint on one side, and that's the mortise and the tenon for another side. We had to do 3 different joints: biscuit joint, domino joint, and mortise and tenon. One mortise and tenon, or 2 by hand and 2 by machine. They're the dominoes, so you have to get these markings dead accurate, otherwise they just don't fit. So luckily mine did, but hundreds didn't, that I've done. And that's the 2 ready to fit together using the dominoes. That's the 2 fit together to use the tenons. And then you can see the biscuit joint here. You can't see it on the other side though. There's the biscuit, and all you do is the machine cuts the groove. You cut the groove on the other side, and you put a biscuit in. And when you glue that's the right size, and that expands to make a really tight fit. Good for things like kitchen doors and things. And that's it, a test fit of all the joints together, obviously the tabletop. And that's it, pretty much ready to glue. I'm just doing a few final adjustments on that one. Right. Just here, there's 3 videos. Now, in a minute, I'll stop this and show you those 3 videos, one after the other. One is putting everything in position. The second one, which I'll go straight into, is doing both sides first and gluing those and make sure they're glued and left to dry first, and then the whole lot put together afterwards. Okay. The 2 videos for the fitting together of the legs, time lapse. Right, next bit was the top. So we've got a piece of wood to fit. Make sure that fits with your table, which I think wasn't glued together at that stage, but we grabbed our bit of wood for the tabletop anyway. And then the first tabletop was the Penrose triangle. So this is cutting the veneer. It's just slightly bigger than the tabletop, obviously. That's the base, and that was a really nice gnarly sort of piece of wood originally. Yeah, that's it, ready to cut. You notice these little tabs on here. That's the tape on the back. The whole back has to be taped to stop it falling apart. That's the actual sheet ready to be glued onto the board now. And you can see I've actually printed that off the internet to the right size, which was that size. It's much easier to do, to cut out and everything. They're the 3 bits to cut that were cut out. So that's the middle, or a spare middle I did. And then the red, the white, and somewhere there's black too. And that's it, actually fitted to the table. Now I've got this picture out because the corners I'm going to put magnets in, and the magnets go north-south facing out. North at the tip, south in the middle, and then in the tops of the table legs there'll be the same ones, so you can actually turn it over. So, you know, if you want to play chess, there's your chessboard. If you want to look at that for the rest of your life, leave that on the top. And that's just clipped together as a magnetic table. So, yeah, and that's actually the finished tabletop with the edging, and you can see I've shone it. I'll show you the wax, how I chose the finish as well. You have to be very careful because your colours run on the veneers. So that's that. Use of magnets. Right, here I'm doing the north-south bit on the tabletop on the legs. So we cut those holes with drills, went along with a chisel, and then inset them in. They actually sat there on their own, but I ended up putting them in with resin in the end, and that's a piece of wood held on with the magnets that's going to go in the tabletop. But I didn't use these in the end because with the thicker wood they weren't strong enough, so I had to use, in the end I used bigger magnets. That's the tabletop again. That's me deciding how I'm going to drill the holes. In the end I'll just put it in a vice-sided drilling. It's a lot easier. There's the resin to measure out 1 to, I think it's 50, 100 to 50. And that's it setting. So I put a pad here, clamped that on and poured the resin in, because obviously the hole's at 45 degrees, it's going to run out. So the resin went in the side there, and that's the top magnets resined in the top of a table leg. And that is the pretty much the finished product. I put little pieces of leather over so you can't see the magnets, and that also protects the tabletop and keeps the bottom bit, when you've got it upside down, rubbing against these pieces of wood too, because that's slightly larger, so you won't get lines on the other tabletop. So that's that. Chessboard top. Now you'd think it'd be very, very difficult to do lots of squares. 8 by 8. So what I did, we've got a special jig, piece of wood with a piece of perspex along it, dead straight. You put the veneer up against it, put your measurer, steel rule, next to that, and just go with the knife. Do lots of strips like that. I did some extra ones, make sure. Yeah, and then the next thing to do is to take them all together as black and white alternate, put them against that piece of perspex again, and then do the same but at 45 degrees. So you're cutting strips of black, white, black, white, black, white. Like that. Got an extra one there. That one I used for the finish testing, which I'll show you in a minute. So once they're all together like that, that's them now inset. There's a few gaps here and there which we dealt with later on, and that's the finished tabletop, like this. So then, yeah, that's it. That's it before I, because there's quite a few bits and pieces that had to be filled in, because the router, to take the edge off, actually followed the resin holes round the corner. So instead of going square, it went round. So that one went round, and that one, when I realised what was happening, I did those two separately, and that was a bit of a chip, so I had to fill those in, which that's the finished product with everything touched up. In fact, gold paint became very effective at touching in holes. So that's the chessboard top. And I'll just show you the how I did the, if I can find it quickly. That was the test for the sanding test for the Penrose triangle, and black was okay, red was okay, but the red went into the white a bit when you were sanding it, so I had to check and make sure that I didn't sand that. And then this is the sanding check for the, using that end bit. Basically I went along, that was a wax, but that came a little bit black. The second wax didn't do any crossover at all. That's linseed oil, which produced a brown sort of effect, and Osmo, which is what we use for a lot of the things, including the wood on mine, ran over a bit with black. So in the end it was the wax. The wax won the contract. And then yeah, so then it was on to the edging. Both sides are done, and so you cut larger with a saw, slightly larger than you need, and then we've got a special guillotine at 45 degrees, which I think is probably used for things like picture frames and things, which you can slice off really small bits, fit it on, slice it a little bit more, fit it on till it's absolutely perfect, and you go right round in a circle, and the last one hopefully should fit. So that's what we'll be doing there. That's fitting it, not that bit's an extra bit, but yeah, that's the fitting. Clamping on two sides first with the glue, and then putting on the other two, and then clamping across. So I actually put two more on that as well. Everyone else, or some people, biscuit jointed theirs too, but I couldn't do that because I'd done both sides of mine veneer already, and the hole cutter probably would have made terrible marks in the veneer, so I just stuck mine on. That's finished product again. Fixing blocks. Now, I didn't do fixing blocks in mine because I've got a bottom and I needed to get in, so I wasn't fixing my tabletop on. But basically what you do to fix the tabletop on, cut a ridge. The ridge actually goes round inside. Mine's round the bottom because I'll put a piece of wood in to keep the chess pieces, the storage. But that would normally be cut round the top, and you make little blocks to fit in with a screw hole. So you put them into the groove first and then screw them on to the table. So that holds the tabletop on. But I did a few just because the remit said we had to make some. So that was the countersink. That was making sure everything was square, because people do look under, you know, if people go to buy a table, they do look underneath as well. So and that's the bit that fits into the groove. So the screw comes up from underneath, that's flat on against the table. So all these edges had to fit. That had to fit the groove, and that had to fit perfectly between the groove and where the tabletop was fitting. So that was that. Finished table. So that's it, looking at the bottom with the legs. I've got the same veneer on the bottom and the same veneer inside, which actually made that piece of wood fit snugly. I didn't glue that because over time the table moves about and the wood dries out, and you want everything to, as much stuff as possible, to move around. So that's the veneer in the inside, the storage. Chess pieces inside, and you can see these leather protective layer. That's all the chessboard top. That's a Penrose triangle, which from that side looks as if it's actually standing off the table. It's quite strange from that angle, and from there too. Looks like it's twisted. Very clever, whoever designed that. and that's the finished table with the grain. I've tried to sort of enhance that photo a bit so you can see the grain. That's it with the chess pieces. The kings and queens on there and the bottoms of the rooks are all from an 18th century set. The rest are about 50s or 60s. So I thought we'd try and incorporate those in a set again. That's it close up. And that's it for that. So I'll put all those pictures on so you can see better. Now, in the folder, there's all what I'm going to put up. That's the two designs or mood maps. This is the draftsman's sort of drawing. Try and get see where the magnets. We're going to have round magnets at one stage, but then I realised when you turn the top over, it opposes. So good job I thought about that. I didn't. I wasn't going to. That's my test piece, the wood. Mosquito colours, just in case I did that, which I will do one day when I get better at marquetry. My table draftsman's design. Obviously the finish test for black and white is probably the worst colours you can get for for running. This was a sheet of paper we did, each of us, when we talked to the rest of the class to get other ideas. It's always good to ask people for other ideas. It says here, explore magnet idea. So that was that's what we did in the end. I said the magnet idea because I was thinking of it for a long time, but it actually went against the remit. There's no magnets in the actual, but I had to have that passed. So, and when one of the teachers thought it was a good idea, I was allowed to do it. But I did some of the blocks too, the fixing blocks. So, right, that's it. Thank you very much.